If irony could pay rent, I'd be living in a mansion. 'Cause really, what kind of baker hates Christmas? And yet, there he was, the storm-eyed, perpetually scowling man behind the counter of the small-town bakery, glaring at candy canes as if they'd personally ruined his life. The first time I walked into Frost and Flour, I thought I'd stumbled into some Hallmark movie set. Twinkling lights in the window, faint cinnamon drifting through the air, frosted cookies stacked neatly on display. But then my gaze landed on him, the baker. He wasn't part of the holiday magic. He was the shadow cutting through it, tall and broad-shouldered, sleeves rolled up, forearms dusted in flour, and an expression that screamed, "Don't you dare wish me Merry Christmas." Naturally, I went back the next day. Not because of the gingerbread, not because of the cranberry scones, not even because of the peppermint hot chocolate that probably had enough sugar to kill a horse. No, I went back because I wanted to see him smile. The problem was, I wasn't sure if he even remembered how. "Let me guess," he muttered one afternoon, not looking up as he shoved a tray of pastries into the glass case. His voice was rough, deep, like gravel softened by smoke. "You're here for the third time this week." I held up my hands. "Hey, maybe I just really like croissants. You bought 3 yesterday." "Yeah, but I ate them." He finally looked at me then, eyes the color of burnt espresso, sharp and dark, studying me like I was some puzzle he had no interest in solving. His jaw tightened, lips pressed in a thin, unimpressed line. "You're wasting your money," he said flatly. "Maybe." But watching the way his brow furrowed, the way he tried so hard to keep that mask, Oni knew something. Behind the bitterness, behind the sharp tongue, there was someone aching for softness. Someone who'd forgotten how good it felt to laugh. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to be the reason he remembered. His name was Ethan. I learned it not because he told me, but because I saw it etched on the business license behind the counter one night when he bent down to grab something. Ethan Hale. A name as sharp and solid as the man himself. He ran the bakery alone, which was probably why he was always exhausted, always tense. The town adored his pastries but whispered about him in the same breath. Too cold. Too grumpy. Doesn't even hang a wreath without complaining. A man who baked perfection but lived like December was a curse. I wasn't supposed to care. I was just some guy drifting through town. A freelance writer who could work anywhere with Wi-Fi and caffeine. I wasn't planning on staying long, but the bakery drew me in. Or rather, he did. The first time I saw his hands soften was over a cupcake. I had walked in late, just before closing. The shop was empty, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound. He was piping delicate swirls of frosting. His scowl slightly relaxed as his focus narrowed to the movement of his wrist. "You know," I said softly, leaning on the counter, "you look kind of peaceful when you do that." He froze, the tip of the piping bag hovering above the cupcake. His eyes flicked to me, startled, then back to his work. "Don't you have somewhere else to be?" he muttered. "Not really. You're ridiculous." "Maybe." I tilted my head. "But you're smiling." For half a second, I saw the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Unguarded, unintentional. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished, swallowed by his usual frown. But I caught it. And once you catch a glimpse of something that beautiful, you can't let it go. What I didn't know was how much darkness he carried. It started with little hints. The way his jaw tightened whenever Christmas carols played on the radio. The way he flinched at children shouting "Merry Christmas" in the street. The way he muttered under his breath whenever a customer asked for something festive. One night, when the snow was falling heavy outside, I lingered longer than usual. He was cleaning the counter, tired lines shadowing his face. "You really hate it, huh?" I asked quietly. "Hate what?" "Christmas." He froze, cloth still in hand. His eyes lifted to mine, sharp, unreadable. Then, after a long silence, he said, "Some things aren't worth celebrating." There was weight in his voice, past I didn't know, a scar too deep for frosting and twinkling lights to cover. I wanted to ask. I wanted to reach across the counter, take his hand, tell him he didn't have to carry it alone. But all I did was nod. I get it, I said softly. But maybe it's not about celebrating. Maybe it's about finding something Samianito hold on to. His gaze lingered on me, heavy, searching. Then he shook his head and turned away. Of course, life has a cruel sense of humor. Because the more I tried to make him smile, the more I realized I wasn't just some customer anymore. I was falling, and falling hard. The storm that night wasn't just outside. It was between us, too. Snow hammered against the bakery windows as the clock ticked past midnight. The streets silent except for the wind. I should have gone home hours ago, but Ethan hadn't kicked me out. Not exactly. He worked in silence, his jaw tight, his movements sharp. I sat at a corner table, sipping the hot chocolate he claimed wasn't for customers, but still sat in front of me without a word. I watched him, watched the way his shoulders carried more than fatigue, watched the way his eyes lingered on the darkness outside as though expecting ghosts to appear in the snow. You don't have to talk about it, I said finally, the words breaking the silence like a pebble on ice. He didn't answer, just scrubbed harder at a mixing bowl. But if you want to, I added, I'll listen. For a moment I thought he'd ignore me, but then he put the bowl down, leaned both hands on the counter, and exhaled like the air was poison. You ever have a holiday ruined so badly, he said hoarsely, that every stupid song, every stupid light, feels like a knife? My chest tightened. His voice cracked in places, not from weakness, but from a wound that had never closed. My family, he continued, eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance, used to love Christmas. It was my mom's favorite. She'd bake with me, decorate the tree, sing carols off-key. My dad pretended to hate it, but couldn't hide how much he loved her joy. Then his throat bobbed. Then one Christmas Eve, they went out for last-minute shopping. Drunk driver. They never came back. The words landed heavy, like bricks on my chest. I was 17, he whispered, and I swore I'd never celebrate again. Silence pressed between us, thick and raw. I wanted to move, to hold him, but something about the way he stood rigid, trembling, but proud kept me rooted. I'm sorry, I said softly. That's not something you just get over. He finally looked at me, eyes glassy, rage and grief burning in equal measure. So tell me, why the hell do you keep showing up here, acting like gingerbread can fix anything? The question should have been a push away, but instead, I heard something beneath it, a plea. Because maybe it's not about gingerbread, I said. My voice wavered, but I held his gaze. Maybe it's about not letting yourself rot alone in the dark. His jaw clenched. You don't know me. Then let me. For a moment, neither of us moved. The storm outside howled, rattling the glass. Inside, it was just two men standing on opposite sides of a counter. The air so charged I could feel it in my bones. He looked away first, muttering, "You're out of your damn mind." But his hands trembled as he reached for another tray, and I knew I had broken through a crack in the wall. The days that followed were strange, fragile things. Ethan didn't suddenly become cheerful. He didn't hang garlands or hum along with the radio. But something shifted. He started leaving me little things on the counter, an extra cookie, a steaming mug when the wind outside was brutal. He still rolled his eyes when I tried to make him laugh, but sometimes I caught the ghost of a smile before he buried it. And once, when the bakery was packed, a customer brushed my arm too close while reaching for a tray. I didn't think twice until I saw Ethan stiffen behind the counter, his eyes narrowing, his jaw tight, a flash of protectiveness so sharp it stunned me. That night, when the shop was empty, I teased him. You glared at that poor guy like you were about to toss him out. He didn't look up from the dough he was kneading. He was standing too close. I grinned. To me? Or to the pastries? His hands stilled. His eyes flicked to mine, dark and unreadable. For a second, I swore I saw it something tender, something unspoken. Then he turned back to the dough, muttering, "Don't flatter yourself." But I couldn't stop smiling, because I knew it wasn't always easy. Sometimes he snapped at me, retreating into himself. Sometimes I caught him staring at the Christmas tree in the square with an expression so hollow it scared me. Sometimes I wondered if I was pushing too hard, if I was selfish to keep coming back. One evening, I found him outside the bakery, sitting on the back steps, cigarette smoke curling in the freezing air. His elbows rested on his knees, his head bowed like he carried the weight of a world only he could see. "You shouldn't smoke," I said quietly, settling beside him. He smirked bitterly. "You gonna lecture me now?" "No, just don't want you to burn out before I figure you out." His laugh was short, humorless. "Maybe you're better off not knowing." "Too late," I said. He turned then, eyes meeting mine in the dim light. For once, there was no wall, no scowl. Just exhaustion, vulnerability, and something I couldn't name. Before I knew it, our shoulders brushed. Not an accident. A choice. He didn't move away. Neither did I. The air thickened, heavy with everything unsaid. His gaze dropped to my lips for the briefest moment, and my heart slammed against my ribs. But then he stood abruptly, crushing the cigarette beneath his boot. "Go home," he muttered. I should have been frustrated. Instead, I felt hope spark, dangerous and bright, because even though he pulled away, he hadn't shut me out completely. The real breaking point came 2 nights before Christmas. The town square glowed with lights, families laughing, couples skating on the frozen pond. I dragged Ethan out with the excuse of needing help carrying boxes, which was a lie he saw through instantly. But somehow he came anyway. He stood stiff beside me, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the crowd like he was bracing for an attack. "It's just people having fun," I said gently. "Fun I don't need." "Maybe, but maybe you deserve it." He shot me a look, sharp enough to cut. "Stop acting like you know what I deserve." The word stung, but I held my ground. "Fine, then tell me what you want. Because I don't buy for a second that you want to be alone forever." Scowling at sugar cookies. His chest rose and fell fast. His hands curled into fists in his pockets. "What I want," he ground out, "is for people to stop prying into things that aren't their damn business." The music, the laughter, the carols all faded around us. It was just him and me, standing under the glow of lights, locked in a standoff of pain and stubbornness. I took a step closer. "Then tell me to leave, Ethan. Tell me to stop coming to your bakery. Tell me you don't care if I walk away." His eyes burned into mine. His throat worked, but no sound came. Finally, in a voice raw and low, he said, "I can't." The world tilted. My breath caught. And before I could think, before I could stop myself, I closed the space between us and pressed my lips to his. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't gentle. It was years of grief crashing into months of longing, fierce and desperate. His hands shot up, gripping my coat as if he couldn't decide whether to push me away or pull me closer. For one breathless moment, I thought he'd shove me off, but then kissed me back. Hard, bruising, like a dam breaking. The cold didn't matter. The stares didn't matter. It was just him finally letting himself feel, and me clinging to him like oxygen. When we finally broke apart, gasping, his forehead rested against mine. His voice was a whisper, broken and terrified. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I admitted. "But we'll figure it out." His hands trembled against me, but he didn't let go. And for the first time, I truly saw it. Not just a flicker, not just a ghost. Ethan Hale smiled. The kiss should have made everything easier. Didn't. If anything, it made the air heavier, the stakes higher. Ethan wasn't suddenly cheerful, wasn't suddenly ready to parade down Main Street holding my hand. The morning after, he barely looked at me when I came into the bakery. He kept his head down, sleeves rolled to his elbows, arms moving with practiced efficiency as he kneaded dough. But I saw it. The way his ears turned red when I said morning. The way his hands stuttered just a second too long when mine brushed his as I reached for a cup. The kiss lived between us like a fragile flame. He was terrified of it, terrified of what it meant. And Yeath hadn't told me to leave. That was enough. For now. The town, of course, noticed everything. Small towns always do. Mrs. Whitaker, who came in every Friday for cinnamon rolls, gave me a long, knowing look when she saw me wiping flour from Ethan's sleeve. Mr. Clarkson asked with a wink if I'd been helping the baker with late-night experiments. Even the teenagers who loitered outside the bakery started whispering when I walked in. Ethan hated it. One afternoon, after a particularly nosy customer made a comment about how cute we looked, he snapped. "This isn't a damn soap opera," he muttered the moment the door shut, slamming the cash drawer a little too hard. I leaned on the counter. "No, but you can't exactly blame people for noticing we spend a lot of time together." His eyes darkened. "They don't get to notice. They don't get to talk." I frowned. "Ethan, it's just gossip. Who cares?" "Easy for you to say," he bit out. "You're not the one everyone's been calling bitter, broken, hopeless for years. You're not the one who has to live with their stares." The words hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. I was the outsider here. I could leave any time. He couldn't. "Hey," I said softly, reaching across the counter to touch his wrist. He stiffened, but didn't pull away. "Let them talk. You're not broken. And even if you were, you don't have to fix yourself alone." His jaw clenched. He looked down at my hand, then up at me, his eyes a storm of fear and longing. "You'll regret this," he said hoarsely. "Try me." The truth was, I was already in too deep. Every night I told myself I'd keep my distance, give him space. And every morning I found myself pushing open the bakery door, craving the warmth of his presence, even if it came wrapped in scowls. I loved the way he moved in the kitchen, efficient, strong, utterly focused. I loved the way his brow furrowed when he tried not to laugh at my terrible jokes. I loved the way he pretended not to care, but always remembered how I took my coffee. I was falling for him, plain and simple, and part of me knew that scared him more than anything else. Christmas Eve arrived like a dare. The town square sparkled with decorations, the smell of roasted chestnuts and cinnamon filling the air. Families bustled with excitement, kids in red scarves darting between stalls. And Ethan locked himself in the bakery, curtains drawn, pretending it was just another night. Couldn't let him do it. Not this time. I showed up just before closing, carrying a paper bag from the market. He scowled when he saw me. "You're relentless," he muttered, wiping his flour-dusted hands on a rag. "And you're impossible," I shot back, stepping inside. "But lucky for you, I'm stubborn." I set the bag on the counter and pulled out 2 candles, a small box of takeout, and his eyes widened a tiny, slightly crooked gingerbread house. "What the hell is that?" "A bribe," I said simply. "You don't have to go outside. You don't have to sing carols or put on a Santa hat. But you will sit down with me tonight, eat, and at least pretend it's Christmas Eve." His lips parted, ready to argue. But for once, no words came. So I lit the candles, unpacked the food, and waited. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he sat across from me. It wasn't perfect. He barely touched the gingerbread. He rolled his eyes at my jokes. He muttered that the candles were a fire hazard. But then halfway through dinner reached for the gingerbread house, broke off a piece, and popped it into his mouth. I grinned. "See? That wasn't so bad." He glared at me, crumbs on his lip. "Shut up." I reached across the table, brushing the crumb away with my thumb. His breath caught. The candlelight flickered between us, shadows softening his sharp edges. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you don't have to love Christmas, but maybe you can love something else, someone else." His eyes searched mine, desperate and afraid. "I don't know if I can," he whispered. "Then let me show you how." I leaned forward, closing the distance. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, full of promises I wasn't sure I could keep but wanted to try. His hand found mine on the table, squeezing like he was holding onto the last solid thing in the world. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I think he believed. The town didn't magically accept us overnight. The whispers grew louder. Some people smiled knowingly. Others frowned. Ethan bristled at every comment, every lingering look. But slowly, he started meeting them with less anger, less fear. Because every time he faltered, I was there. And every time I faltered, he surprised me with quiet strength. One morning, after a particularly brutal snowstorm, we opened the bakery late. Customers trickled in, grateful for warmth and pastries. As I carried a tray to the counter, Ethan brushed past me, his hand grazing mine in full view of everyone. It was small, subtle, but deliberate. The whispers started immediately, but Ethan didn't flinch. He just looked at me, a faint smile tugging at his lips, as if to say, let them talk. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, the snow glittering like sugar. I woke to find Ethan in the bakery kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair mussed, working on a tray of cinnamon rolls. "You never stop, do you?" I asked, leaning in the doorway. He looked up, a soft light in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Baking's the only way I know how to breathe." I walked over, sliding my arms around his waist from behind. He stiffened for a second, then relaxed against me. "Then let me breathe with you," I whispered into his shoulder. He turned, flour smudged on his cheek, and kissed me with a sweetness that made my chest ache. It wasn't about Christmas anymore. It wasn't about the past. It was about us two men who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of places, in the unlikeliest of ways. And somehow that was enough. Maybe the world would keep whispering. Maybe the ghosts of the past would never fully fade. But in the warmth of that bakery, with cinnamon in the air and Ethan's hand in mine, I knew one thing for certain. For the first time in years, Ethan Hale had a reason to smile. And I would spend every day making sure he never forgot how. The days after Christmas felt quieter, softer, like the storm had finally passed. Snow still lined the sidewalks, holiday lights still blinked in the square. But inside Ethan's bakery, something had shifted. It was him. The edges of his scowl dulled, his silence less heavy. He still barked at teenagers loitering by the door, still grumbled when I teased him. But every once in a while I caught him laughing, really laughing. It was raw and awkward, like a sound he hadn't made in years. And every time, I felt like I was watching the sun rise after a long winter. Of course, it wasn't all smooth. Healing never is. One night in early January, I found him alone in the kitchen, staring at an old photo tucked into the corner of the bulletin board. It was worn at the edges, the colors fading, but the image was clear. A younger Ethan with his parents, all three of them grinning over a gingerbread house. I stood quietly in the doorway. He didn't turn, but his shoulders were tense, his hands gripping the edge of the counter. "They loved Christmas," he said finally, voice low. "It wasn't just the day. It was everything. The music, the lights, the baking. They made it feel magical." And then his breath caught. It was gone, just gone. And I thought if I hated it enough, maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. I crossed the room, gently placing a hand on his back. He flinched but didn't move away. "Ethan," I whispered, "loving something that hurts doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're alive. They'd want you to be alive, to feel joy again." He turned then, eyes red, jaw tight. "And what if I lose you too?" The fear in his voice gutted me. This wasn't just about Christmas. It was about every scar he carried, every person he'd ever lost. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Then we'll face it, together. I can't promise forever, Ethan. Nobody can. But I can promise right now. And right now, I'm not going anywhere." He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch like a man starved for warmth. And for the first time, he didn't argue. That was the night he let me stay. Not just until closing, not just until the storm passed. He handed me a spare key, muttering something about early deliveries and don't make a big deal out of it. But we both knew it was a big deal. I moved into the empty apartment above the bakery within a week. It wasn't much creaky floors, drafty windows, a bed that squeaked if you so much as breathed too hard, but it was ours. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings, I helped with deliveries, carrying trays of bread through snow-dusted streets, while Ethan barked at me to quit dropping crumbs. Afternoons, I wrote at a corner table while he worked in the kitchen, the scent of sugar and cinnamon my constant companion. Evenings, we closed the shop together, sweeping floors and wiping counters, the silence between us no longer heavy but comfortable. At night, when the world was quiet, he let me hold him. And slowly he began to believe. The town adjusted, too. Some never stopped whispering, but others warmed to the sight of us, Ethan with flour in his hair, me stealing cookies when I thought he wasn't looking. Mrs. Whitaker started bringing extra scarves, just in case the boy from out of town doesn't know how to dress for real winters. The teenagers eventually stopped loitering and started asking if Ethan would teach them to bake. It wasn't perfect, but it was something like acceptance. And for Ethan, that was everything. The real test came the following December. The town was buzzing again, stringing up lights, planning the annual Christmas Eve festival. Ethan tried to pretend he didn't notice, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched when carols drifted through the radio. One evening, as we closed the bakery, I caught him staring at the window display. "You don't have to decorate if you don't want to," I said gently. He glanced at me, then at the empty space where other shops had garlands and wreaths. "Maybe, just a little," he muttered. My heart swelled. So we did it together. Clumsy, awkward, more laughter than skill. The lights tangled, the garland crooked, the gingerbread men leaning like they'd had too much eggnog. But when we stepped back, Ethan smiled, really smiled at the sight. "It's terrible," he said. "It's perfect," I corrected, slipping my arm around his waist. And for once, he didn't argue. On Christmas Eve, a year after our first kiss, we stood in the square again. The air was crisp, the lights glowing, families bustling with joy. But this time, Ethan wasn't rigid. He wasn't glaring at the decorations like they'd betrayed him. He stood beside me, his hand warm in mine, his expression soft. People looked, of course. They always would. But Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned close, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "You were right," I grinned. "About what?" "About not letting myself rot alone in the dark." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "You pulled me out. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever." My throat tightened. "Ethan," before I could finish, he kissed me. Slow, tender, nothing like the desperate clash of that first night. This was different. This was love, steady and real, under the glow of Christmas lights. When we broke apart, the world around us blurred. It didn't matter if people stared, didn't matter if whispers spread, because he was smiling. And I knew then that no matter how much pain the past carried, the future was ours to build. Life didn't magically turn into a fairy tale. There were still mornings when Ethan woke from nightmares, breathing hard, clutching the sheets like he was drowning. There were still days when grief hit him out of nowhere, sharp and brutal. But he wasn't alone anymore. I was there to hold him through the storms, to remind him that love didn't erase pain, it just made it bearable. And in return, he gave me a kind of home I'd never known. The bakery became more than a shop. It was laughter over spilled flour, quiet dinners after long days, stolen kisses between trays of bread. It was the life we built together, imperfect and beautiful. The following spring, he surprised me. I came downstairs one morning to find him at the counter, holding something small in his flour-dusted hands. "A key." "What's this?" I asked. He shrugged, trying for nonchalance but failing miserably. "Spare key. For the shop. In case I, oversleep." I blinked at him. "Ethan Hale, are you giving me the key to your heart disguised as a bakery?" He glared. "Shut up." But his ears were red, and when I leaned in to kiss him, he didn't pull away. Years later, when people asked how we started, I always told the same story. I kept buying cakes just to see him smile. What I didn't add was that somewhere along the way he taught me something too. That love isn't about fixing someone. It's about standing beside them while they heal. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. It's about building a crooked gingerbread house together and calling it home. And Ethan? He still scowls, still complains about carols, still pretends Christmas is too much fuss. But every year, when the first snow falls, he bakes a gingerbread house. And every year, he lets me put the star on top. And every year, he smiles. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.